This meeting of Joint Appropriations Subcommittee Section E will now come to order. Clerk will take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair Fuller.
Here.
Representative Keogh.
Here.
Representative Matthews.
Here.
Here. Senator Regier.
Excused.
Representative Jones.
Here.
Representative Barker.
Here.
And Chair Beatty.
Here, we have a quorum and we will continue. Well, the purpose of today's meeting is to get organized and also to establish a starting point in our budget. So we'll get along with that right away. First of all, I'd like to introduce our staff. First of all, to my left is Julia Patton, who is returning as our lead fiscal analyst, joined by Kurt Swimley and Alexandra Ghosh. We also have our clerk this year, Caitlin Senna, and our good sergeant, who is probably, there he is, and who will be speaking to us, Greg Titchener, who will be speaking to us about safety for this committee room later. I also am happy to see here analysts from the Governor's Budget Office, both returning for another tour of duty in Section E, Nancy Hall and Ben Turnus. So thank you for joining us. First of all, I think all of you have been around Section E or the Interim Budget Committee to one extent or another, but for the record, you know, the mission of Section E is to scrutinize proposed executive budget for 7 agencies: the Office of Public Instruction, the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education, which is the other ways, including the university system, the Board of Public Education, School for the Deaf and Blind, Montana State Library, the Historical Society, and the Montana Arts Council. Now, the way that we go forth in doing this is that we will have budget hearings for each one of these agencies, and in order to expedite the budget hearings and to stay focused on what's relevant to the upcoming biennium and the budget that is before us, I will not be leading with introductions from the agencies. We had an opportunity to do that during our last interim budget committee meeting in December. That does not mean to say I do not want the agencies present, because as you all know, there's a good deal of discourse between our agencies and members of the committee as we analyze the budget. The general way that the budget hearings are going to go forward is we'll start with our fiscal analysts providing their analysis of the agencies for which they are responsible. We'll be focusing primarily on present law adjustments and new proposals that are found in the budget, but as you well know, oftentimes agencies will come to us with suggestions for other new proposals that aren't already included in the executive budget, and this will be a time for those agencies to alert us to potential opportunities. Naturally, because they're not in the executive budget, they are not allowed to forward those, but those are ideas that members of the legislature may determine are worthy, and one or more of you may advocate for later. Along the same line, there may be new proposals or ideas for new proposals that are contemplated by the legislature, and you're free, and I encourage you during the hearing process to lay out any ideas you have of that particular nature. The purpose of the hearings are to hear ideas. What we'll do after hearings for agencies, usually we'll wait and get a couple of agencies under our belt. We'll schedule, as you can see in your schedule, we'll have work sessions, and those are times for us. We will not be having public hearings. We will not be taking public comment, and we will not be taking executive action. Rather, it's a chance for our staff to respond to us with questions that we pose, or for us to have received information from the agencies in response to our questions, so that we're in a good position to complete our evaluation of that agency. Finally, in mid-February, we will take executive action on all of our agencies. It is the custom of some sections to do executive action as they move through the budget, but since oftentimes some of our decisions are going to be, we have a zero-sum game budget. That's because we must balance the budget overall. So we must be mindful. A good idea for one agency that costs money, a new proposal may rob money for another one. And so there may be a necessity for us to prioritize, and that is why I hold and wait on executive action until mid-February. But we will work hard to get there. You'll see in the schedule there are several days that we don't meet. They're in place in order for our staff to do their work, because when our staff hears things, almost inevitably it requires them to work on things. I want to make sure they have time to do that. But if we start getting crunched for time, anticipate that those free days won't be free anymore, and we'll hold hearings or work sessions as necessary in order to get done by mid-February. We must do that so that our section is ready to go before the full Appropriations Committee and then ultimately before the House and over to the Senate and Senate Finance and Claims, et cetera, et cetera. Are there any questions on the process that we have in place for Section E? I do have a few other administrative things to talk to in no particular order. I think I'll start with Sergeant Titchener's giving us a safety briefing, just in case something happens between now and in the next 5 minutes. So, Sergeant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Sergeant Greg Tickner with the Sergeant-at-Arms Office for the House. I'm going to be giving a safety emergency briefing this is room 472. My background is military, law enforcement, EMS, disaster relief and response, wildland firefighting. But for the past month I've been here training with the Sergeant-at-Arms staff. We've been doing a lot of training, going over procedures and policies for the Capitol, for emergency response, emergency management. In the case of a lockdown, which could be as a result of an active shooter protest or demonstration of some sort, sergeant staff will secure the room and the chairman will direct everyone to remain in place and then we will stay locked down until we're given the all clear by law enforcement. In the case of evacuation, possibly due to fire or earthquake, I will notify the chairman that we need to evacuate and which direction we will go when safe to do so. If it is an earthquake, we will shelter in place until we decide that it's safe to move. So we're going to take shelter under the podium, under the desks, under a chair, wherever you can until, if there's any debris falling, then we'll decide when we're going to exit the building. Please secure all personal items. And we'll follow the evacuation route map posted on the wall back here by the door, so please familiarize yourselves with that. The primary evacuation route is going to be out the main door and to the right and down the staircase. If need, we can use the fire tower that's in the house gallery. If we need to use the door in the back corner, we can go out and across the Senate gallery to the staircase by the rotunda, which is also the route we'll take if the chairman wishes to clear the committee in case of a demonstration or riot. The rally point, if we evacuate the building, will be in front of the building on the northeast corner, down by the Montana Historical Society, so down the front lawn, down in front. The closest AED is in the rotunda gallery by the staircase. And in the event we need it, there's also a fire extinguisher in the hallway to the right here and a case on the wall. In the case of medical emergency, we may ask the public to clear the room and make space for first responders, maybe clear some space depending on what the emergency is. Quick reminder, if I may, the public are not permitted forward of the podium and the ends of the tables. So if overzealous constituents or members of the public come forward, I will ask them to come back here, either to this public area or out into the hallway. So I won't embarrass you, but I will ask them to step out, please. So as a reminder, yeah, if you need a copy of the building's emergency action plan, I can get that for you. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to ask me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sergeant. Any question for the Sergeant? Very well. In the event that we need your assistance, we will be following your instructions. Next thing up is proxies. Vice Chairman Senator Fuller has our proxy sheets here. Please see him to complete the proxies, and he'll elect on what he wants to do with those. Either he'll keep them or our clerk can hold those for him in the event that we need them. This committee doesn't take executive action very often, so but when it does, it's important to have your proxy sheets in place. Next item up is we have a change in terminology with respect to our fiscal analysis, and I'm going to have Julia Patton go over that with you so there's no confusion on this. So, Julia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look in your binders, the first couple of pages are our overall subcommittee schedule, and then the agenda for today. I'll be providing daily agendas for you. But behind the daily agenda, we have a handout on positions budgeted. And basically, this is our new terminology for what were formerly known as full-time equivalents, or FTE. So in years past, when we print out the budget analysis, there will be a line for FTE shown in the tables. That's now PB, or positions budgeted. Effectively, it's not really any different than what FTE represent or used to represent, but we've switched the terminology to positions budgeted to kind of clarify how we think about FTE or positions budgeted, in the sense that they are not the same as just a person, right? You could have one person who's working half-time who is half or 0.5 of a FTE or 0.5 of a position budgeted. And so the change in terminology was an attempt to help clarify that, because I think it got confusing for members of the legislature when we were talking about FTE. There's a handout on that if you need further information on on positions budgeted. It'll be a shift for me to change to talking about PB instead of FTE. We can have one of our analysts, or I think he's our deputy director or assistant director, come and talk to the committee about that. But if you're feeling like you have a pretty good understanding, I think most folks here have kind of been following the Legislative Finance Committee from last interim. They're kind of familiar with the reasons why we made those changes and how that works.
Are there any questions? If there aren't any now, of course, you can take them up to the next meeting, but I will turn to Representative Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Julia, if I may. So does this take care of the issue we were having with the Montana School of the Deaf and Blind and how their positions are? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Representative Keogh, I don't think that will make a change. That has to do more with how the budgeting system communicates with the accounting system, and how the FTE or positions budgeted are listed at different amounts in the budgeting system and the accounting system. And I will have to talk to our analyst for MSDB and potentially with the budget office to check and see if that was resolved during this budget process. But if not, that's certainly something that the committee could take a look at.
Other questions? Well, I'll just have one final comment on this. The problem that we seem to have is, and it's a natural one, is in most people's mind there's an equivalence between when you use the term FTE, that equals a person. That is not true. FTE is actually a measure of dollars. And budgeted position makes more sense just because it's more explicitly not a human being. So we went through many machinations during the interim, coming to trying to figure out how to resolve this cognitive dissonance that one would have when they seen the term FTE. And this represents the best we could do. I think Representative Matthews was involved in that process as well, and I'm sure that he could describe how torturous this simple process seemed to be. But if he elects not to tell you about that, I'd be fine with that too. All right. Next thing on the agenda, I'm trying to see if there's any other administrative matters that you want to speak to. I guess I'll speak to one real quickly, otherwise I'll forget to do it. You see you have the brown manila folders on your desk. If you wish to keep documents, our clerks will gather those up at the end of the day and redistribute those so you don't have to take them with you. You're free to take them with you if you wish. The same goes for the gigantic binder that you have, which is actually going to get thicker and thicker as you get additional materials. You may leave it here, it'll be secured, it'll be back on your desk, or you may take it with you as you see fit. So that's just a bit of information on that. Vice Chair Fuller, I mean, I will leave it to you to work out how you want to deal with managing the proxies. I don't know if you have anything you want to say right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, what I'll do is until I get all of them signed by all of the individuals, I will keep them. I'm still pretty good at not losing stuff.
All right. Any other administrative matters? Very well. We do have a hearing today for which we will take executive action tomorrow. And this hearing is to establish our budgetary starting point. Ms. Patton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to briefly navigate us to the point on the website where this is posted. And hopefully that'll show you also where our committee webpage is. So if you go to the main legislative website, there's a drop down for fiscal, kind of on the top bar near the right-hand side, and you can go to committees. And then we have the administrative committee, which is the LFC, but if you click the next tab over, we have budget committees. And then, of course, section E. And if you're looking for materials from the last couple of sessions and interims, you can go to those various committee pages. But of course, for this committee during session, you'll want the 2027 biennium session page. And it is on our old website, so that's not a mistake. It just happened to be how the transition shook out. But up top here, you'll see we have a Section E session schedule, and then tabs for the daily agendas, the meeting materials, and then the meeting materials will be categorized kind of by general materials or by the agencies. We also have the agency profiles here and the budget analysis, which of course those are all in your, I believe those are all in your binders. And then any public comment that's been posted, and a list of staff and legislators. But really today what we're going to focus on is the vote sheet for the base budget, which is, it's often called the budgetary starting point or the base budget. And so basically what this base budget amount represents is the fiscal year 2025 appropriations with, whatever budget changes were made by the executive branch throughout, I think probably through August, because the base budget had to be established at least late August or early September in the budgeting system. So any budget changes for fiscal year 2025 that occurred through August, and then also the one-time only appropriations for fiscal year 2025 being one-time only were removed. And so essentially the fiscal year 2025 appropriations minus the one-time onlys plus some budget changes get us to our base budget. And this vote sheet will show the base budget by fund type. So general fund, state special fund, federal special revenue funds, and proprietary funds, if they are budgeted proprietary funds. And then we'll also show by expenditure category. So that will include personal services, operating expenses, equipment and intangible assets, capital outlay, local assistance, grants, benefits and claims, transfers, and debt service. And it will also show the positions budgeted. And again, this is our House Bill 2 base budget, so it's not going to show positions that are non-House Bill 2 positions. Some positions are funded with statutory appropriations, and similarly, those dollars won't show up in this base budget either. This is the House Bill 2 base budget. And then it's broken down by agency, by program. So you'll notice at the top of this sheet, and I apologize for the font size, it had to be small to fit it all on one page, but you'll notice we have OPI, the state level activities program, again, broken down by fund type on the left, and then by expenditure category on the right. And then on the far right, you have a column for positions budgeted for each year. And then we have the local education activities program as well by those same categories. And then at the bottom, there's a sum of the base budget for OPI. So you can see the total for the agency. One thing to note is you'll see that the fiscal year 26 and 27 base budgets are the same. That's not a mistake because when we start hearing about the decision packages proposed by the executive, those decision packages will add to the base. And so if you have a DP short per decision package that adds $100,000 each year, it will need to add to the base in each year to get the total. And so similarly, if the funding is going to increase by $100,000 in one year and then $200,000 on the next year, those will build on the base. And so that's why you see the base being the same in both fiscal year 2026 and 2027. And so this base budget is shown by every single agency. You'll notice when we have a single program agency like the Board of Public Education, of course, the program amounts and the totals are the same, so it's a bit redundant, but I still think it's helpful to look at the totals there. Let's see, we go all the way down to the bottom. I believe there is oh, no, we don't have a sum for total section at the bottom, but I believe that's shown right in the top line. So if you see section E, education, you can see in that very first line under the headings, the total for the section. And so once this starting point motion has been adopted, assuming that that's what this committee chooses to do, when we take executive action, we'll have another kind of tracking sheet that will look very similar to this, but we'll add the DPs for when you vote on those in mid-February. And I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair, unless there are questions.
Are there any questions on the presentation that was just made? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Is there any public comment online?
No, Mr. Chair. And
I was remiss in not introducing our online coordinator. Not sure I can say your first name correctly the first time. So is that Jadine?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jadine O'Neill, another member of our team who will be with us virtually. Well, seeing no committee discussion and no public comment, this closes the hearing on our starting point. Preview of coming attraction. Tomorrow I will ask the vice chairman to move adoption of this starting point for our budget. All right, but let's take a look at the upcoming agenda. Julia?
So tomorrow, as Chair Beatty mentioned, we will take executive action on the budgetary starting point. And we will also have our very first budget hearing for an agency for the Montana State Library. And then Friday and Monday next week, we will continue with hearings for the Montana State Library. The committee will be doing kind of a full budget review or a deep dive of a couple different agencies or programs. And this is happening, I think, kind of across the various sections. And so one of those deep dives that we'll be doing is for the Montana State Library. We will also be doing a deep dive into the local education activities program for OPI. And so that's why those two particular agency and program will have a few extra days scheduled. But let's see, tomorrow will be kind of our traditional budget hearing, as we'll do for all the agencies. And then we'll have a couple days for the deep dive. And then on Tuesday, we will do a work session for K-12 budget training. And I believe that Kurt is going to help me train with the training for the property tax piece. And then Pat McCracken is also planning to attend to help with the K-12 budget training. He's with Legislative Services. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, we will have budget hearings for OPI. And then Friday, no subcommittee meeting next week.
Thank you. One other thing I was remiss in doing from an administrative standpoint is to bring up the topic of a snack account. I'm surprised that Senator Windy Boy did not bring that to my attention already. So what I believe that our clerk has an envelope here, and I'm going to pass this envelope around. And I'm suggesting a donation of $20 to go through the entire session. And I'm going to circle yes, which means I just put 20 bucks in there. I encourage you to do the same. You will find that having snacks here first thing in the morning is always good, and for some of us, it's essential. Otherwise, I'm not sure that some of us would be making it to the meeting. Is there any other business that we should attend to today, Julia?
Not that I can think of, Mr. Chair.
Caitlin, have we covered everything that you need? Very well. Well, welcome to Section E. Do not expect to be getting out early like this very often, but make good use of the little bit of free time that you have. This meeting is adjourned.